Introduction. The power of a clear and confident voice. Speaking clearly and confidently isn't a talent reserved for a privileged few. It's not a magical gift that someone simply inherits at birth. It's, in fact, a skill. One that can be learned, developed, trained, and, over time, mastered. And when you do, when you truly begin to express yourself from a place of clarity and confidence, something profound changes within you. It's no longer just about sounding good or impressing others. It's about feeling heard, understood, and respected. It's about conveying exactly what you think, without stumbling on your words, without being paralyzed by fear, without your voice trembling when what you have to say is important. In this audiobook, you will go through a process of real transformation. You won't hear empty phrases like, be yourself, or trust yourself, without context. Here you will find tools, principles, exercises, and clear guidance for building strong communication from the inside out. Imagine for a moment what would change in your life if you could express an idea at the exact moment you needed to, without hesitation, without wavering. Think of a difficult conversation with someone you love, a job interview, a meeting with your boss, an important discussion with your partner, or even a social situation where you'd like to share your opinion without that block that keeps you silent. How would others' perception of you change if you were able to speak firmly, clearly, and calmly, even in uncomfortable moments? But beyond how they see you, how would your own perception of yourself change if you could say what you think, what you feel, what you want, without hesitation? Verbal expression isn't just a way of interacting. It's a direct path to building identity. What you don't say is repressed. And what you repress distances you further and further from your authenticity. Many believe that speaking with confidence is synonymous with being extroverted. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are very talkative people who don't communicate anything profound, and quiet people who, when they decide to speak, leave a lasting impression. Speaking confidence doesn't depend on the volume of your voice or the number of words you use. It depends on your connection to the message you share, the structure you give to your ideas, and your presence when you deliver it. And all of this can be learned. It doesn't matter if you've had negative experiences speaking in public, if you stutter when you're nervous, if you feel like you don't know how to organize your thoughts, or if you fear going blank. This audiobook was designed precisely to help you deactivate those blocks at their root and replace them with tools that give you back the power of your voice. One of the biggest obstacles we face when expressing ourselves is the fear of judgment. That fear that what we say will be ridiculed, criticized, or simply ignored. But that fear doesn't come from the present. It was built in the past. Perhaps from a mockery, a harsh correction, a feeling of embarrassment in a specific situation. Over time, that memory becomes an internal narrative. I'd better not speak up. I'd better keep quiet. I'm no good at this. And that narrative becomes a habit, an automatic reflex that kicks in every time we want to raise our voice. But here's the truth. You weren't born with that insecurity. You learned it. And everything you learn can be unlearned. You don't need to become someone different. You just need to reconnect with your natural ability to communicate truthfully. Communicating well doesn't mean speaking perfectly. No one does. We all have filler words, moments when we lose the thread, involuntary pauses. But people who communicate powerfully don't focus on sounding flawless. They focus on being authentic, structured, and present. For example, a good communicator isn't afraid to pause to gather their thoughts, because they know that silence also communicates. They don't feel guilty about not using fancy words, because they understand that simplicity is the most direct path to clarity. And above all, they don't try to convince through pressure, but through connection. That's what you'll develop here, a new relationship with your own voice. Throughout this audiobook, I'll guide you step by step to help you eliminate the mental noise that sabotages your clarity. You'll learn how to identify the thoughts that hinder your confidence and how to replace them with constructive internal dialogue. You'll see how organizing your mind before speaking radically changes the way you express yourself. You'll learn the fundamentals of a powerful voice: structure, intention, rhythm, presence, energy, and authenticity. But more importantly, you'll experience the internal process that occurs when you decide to take control of your voice, not just as a tool for speaking, but as a vehicle for transforming your reality. If you've ever had words stuck in your throat, if you felt frustrated by not knowing how to say what's on your mind, if you feigned confidence while your thoughts trembled inside, you've come to the right place. This audiobook isn't just made to help you speak better. It's made to help you speak with power, with meaning, with truth, and with the deep confidence of knowing that what you have to say is worth hearing. No matter your story, no matter your starting point. Starting now, begin a journey on which you will regain your ability to express yourself without fear, with presence, direction, and impact. Because your voice is an extension of your mind. And your mind has a lot to say. But before continuing, please write in the comments which city you're listening to this audiobook from, and if this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel now. This way, you'll be sure not to miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer every day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to waste. Now, let's continue. Chapter 1. Myths that sabotage your communication. One of the biggest obstacles that prevents many people from communicating confidently and clearly isn't technique, or even stage fright, but rather the invisible beliefs they've carried around for years. Beliefs that are silently repeated, almost unquestioned, and that act as a constant brake every time someone tries to raise their voice. And the most surprising thing is that many of these beliefs aren't even true. They're myths. Assumed ideas that, when not challenged, become limiting truths. If we want to speak with power, the first thing we must do is defuse these myths one by one. Because no matter how much you practice voice techniques, if deep down you believe you weren't born to express yourself well, you'll self-sabotage again and again. One of the most common myths is the idea that only extroverts communicate well. That speaking fluently, with presence, and with charisma comes naturally to those born with an open, sociable, and spontaneous personality. This thinking automatically excludes millions of people who consider themselves reserved, analytical, or quiet. But the truth is that powerful communication isn't a personality trait. It's a skill that can be trained. There are deeply introverted people who, when speaking publicly or privately, achieve a level of impact and connection that surpasses that of many extroverts. Why? Because what defines good communication isn't the number of words or spontaneity, but the intention, structure, and presence with which something is said. A clear example can be seen in public figures who, without having a loud personality, make a difference every time they open their mouths. It's their preparation, their connection to the message, and their conscious practice that makes them leaders, not their level of extroversion. Another deeply rooted myth is that speaking well is a gift, as if it were a talent reserved for a select few who were born with a kind of star in their throat. This idea creates a psychological barrier that's difficult to break, because it implies that if you don't speak well from the start, then you have no hope. But this is false. If you observe any great communicator, a leader, a teacher, a speaker, a therapist, an entrepreneur, and study their beginnings, you'll discover that most of them didn't start out speaking fluently or confidently. Many, in fact, suffered from stage fright, made mistakes, got stuck, or were even shy at first. The difference is that they decided to learn, practice, and hone their skill. And like any other skill, improving your communication requires time, attention, and consistent action. The important thing is to understand that you don't need to be born with the talent to express yourself well. You need to develop it with intention. A third myth that sabotages many is the belief that to sound intelligent, you have to use complex words. That speaking well means using complicated terms, technical jargon, sophisticated phrases, or almost academic vocabulary. This not only alienates the listener, but often makes communication confusing, cumbersome, and unnecessarily difficult to follow. Intelligence in communication lies not in sounding complicated, but in making the complex simple. In translating your ideas in a way that the other person quickly understands, remembers, and can apply. That is the true skill of a good communicator. Clarity, not complexity. Einstein said that if you can't explain something simply, you haven't understood it well. And the same applies here. Using simple words doesn't make you less prepared. It makes you more understandable. And being understood is the true goal when speaking. There's also the myth that I'd better keep quiet so I don't make mistakes. This belief stems from the fear of making mistakes, stuttering, losing the thread, being corrected, or being judged. So many people prefer silence to taking risks. The problem is that sustained silence doesn't protect, it weakens. The more you remain silent out of fear, the more insecurity you accumulate. And the more insecurity you accumulate, the harder it becomes to speak the next time. It's a silent, but powerful cycle. The mistake isn't in making mistakes. The mistake is in believing that making mistakes invalidates you. All great communicators make mistakes. What sets them apart is that they don't stop because of them. They learn, adjust, and move on. And the most curious thing is that the audience rarely remembers your mistakes. They remember your message, your energy, and your authenticity, not your perfection. Another very common limiting belief is thinking that you need to say something important to be worth speaking. As if your voice only has value when you have a brilliant idea, a profound opinion, or an exceptional experience. But the truth is that the value of your voice isn't in the grandeur of what you say, but in the truth that underpins it. You don't need to impress anyone to communicate powerfully. You need to be aligned with yourself, with what you think, what you feel, what you see. People don't connect with perfect speeches. They connect with people who speak from clarity and honesty. If you wait until you have something perfect to say, you'll spend your life in silence. And that's not communication. That's repression. Expressing yourself doesn't require permission. It requires choice. It's also common to hear people say, "I don't have a good voice," as if that were reason enough not to speak. But the voice isn't a fixed factor. It's a malleable instrument. You can train it, strengthen it, fine-tune it, make it clearer, slower, and firmer. It's not about sounding like a broadcaster. It's about your voice reflecting who you are. And to do that, you don't need to change it. You just need to use it consciously. In this audiobook, you'll learn how to work with your voice without forcing it, respecting your style while elevating its impact. Because when a voice is accompanied by intention, structure, and presence, it becomes magnetic, regardless of its tone or timbre. So, if all of these are myths, why do so many people continue to believe them? Because they're repeated. They're normalized. They're inherited. Sometimes they come from family, school, past experiences, unfortunate comments, or simply the collective fear of exposing oneself. And because they're not questioned, they stick. But now you have the opportunity to break them. To see them for what they are, borrowed ideas that no longer serve you. The truth is that you can communicate clearly, even if you're introverted. You can learn to speak confidently, even if you haven't done it well before. You can express yourself with impact using simple words. You can make mistakes and still convey value. You can speak, even if you don't have the perfect voice. Because none of these things define a good communicator. What defines you is your decision to speak with purpose, to structure your ideas, to practice without giving up, and to turn your voice into a clear and confident extension of what you think. This is the time to let go of those old beliefs that have limited you. Stop looking at good communicators as if they were a special group, separate from you. They aren't. They just started earlier. They just practiced more. They just allowed themselves to fail and keep talking. And now you're going to do the same. Because if you can think clearly, you can speak clearly. And if you can speak clearly, you can transform every conversation into an opportunity to connect, lead, and leave an impact. Chapter 2. The Root of Insecurity in Speaking. Speaking insecurity doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's not simply a lack of technique or a personality problem. It has deep roots connected to our personal history, our past experiences, and, above all, to the internal dialogue we silently engage in day after day. To speak confidently, you must first understand where that insecurity stems from. Because it's not just about speaking better, but about transforming the relationship you have with your own voice. And to do that, you need to understand the origin of your blocks. In many cases, insecurity when expressing oneself stems from a fear of judgment. That constant fear of being criticized, of not saying the right thing, of appearing ignorant, of making a mistake in front of others. It's a paralyzing feeling. You're about to say something, and immediately that inner voice appears, whispering, "What if you make a mistake? What if they interrupt you? What if they look at you strangely? What if they judge you?" That voice, even if it doesn't shout, has incredible power. It can make you keep quiet in a meeting, avoid raising your hand in class, or make you prefer to send a message instead of speaking in person. And most importantly, it doesn't originate in the present. That voice is the echo of past experiences. Maybe you spoke at some point and someone mocked you. Maybe someone harshly corrected you or made you feel like your opinion was worthless. Maybe you were interrupted again and again until you lost the desire to continue speaking. These experiences, even if they seem small or distant, leave traces. We don't always consciously remember them, but we carry them. And over time, those traces become beliefs. I'd better keep quiet. I'm no good at this. Whenever I talk, I get nervous. That's how the pattern is born. And every time you repeat that belief, you reinforce the circuit of insecurity. It's a cycle. But like any cycle, it can be broken. To break this cycle, the first thing you need is self-awareness. Observe yourself. Listen to what you say before you speak. Do you encourage yourself or sabotage yourself? Do you give yourself permission to express yourself or do you anticipate failure? Changing your way of communicating starts with changing the way you talk to yourself. If your internal dialogue is full of judgments, fears, and comparisons, then it's logical that speaking out loud causes you tension. External security only appears when you build internal security. And that building begins with identifying what limits you today. A useful practice is to consciously record those moments when you feel insecure about speaking. What situation triggers it? What do you say to yourself? What sensations appear in your body? By observing yourself without judgment, you begin to uncover the patterns that sustain your fear. For example, you may feel paralyzed every time you speak in front of authority figures, or that you block more in large groups than in one-on-one conversations, or that you struggle more when you haven't prepared what you're going to say. These details are key because they allow you to work with precision. It's not about eliminating fear completely. It's about recognizing it, understanding it, and not letting it control you. Another fundamental element at the root of insecurity is comparison. We constantly compare ourselves to others who seem to speak better, more fluently, more naturally. We see them as impossible role models. But what we don't see is their process. We don't see how many times they practiced, how many times they failed, how many times they also felt insecure. We compare our behind the scenes with their final presentation. And that comparison is unfair and exhausting. The only comparison that counts is with yourself. Do you express yourself more clearly today than you did a month ago? Are you making even a little progress? That's the metric that matters. Because confidence isn't a fixed state. It's a process. And in that process, the body also speaks. The fear of judgment is reflected physically. Shoulders tense, voice catches, breathing becomes shallow, hands tremble. But each of these reactions has a solution. When you learn to acknowledge what you feel without running away from it, you can begin to regulate your body so that it doesn't sabotage your message. Breathe deeply before speaking, relax your jaw muscles, maintain eye contact, anchor your feet to the ground. These small physical actions send signals to your brain that you are safe. And when your body feels safe, your mind calms too. That's why communicating confidently isn't just a mental act. It's also a bodily experience. Besides fear and comparison, another element that fuels insecurity when speaking is perfectionism. That idea that you have to say everything flawlessly, without pauses, without mistakes, without forgetting anything. But perfection isn't real. And trying to achieve it only increases anxiety. No one communicates perfectly. Real conversations are full of interruptions, doubts, and repetitions. What makes them powerful isn't perfection, but the intention behind them. When you allow yourself to speak without pressure, when you give yourself room to make mistakes, you free yourself. Because you understand that making mistakes doesn't mean failing. It means being alive. You're practicing, you're growing. And that's the only real way to move forward. On this path toward more confident communication, it's also key to review what types of messages you repeat to yourself daily. Do you speak to yourself with compassion or harshly? Do you remind yourself of your achievements or only your mistakes? Do you give yourself credit for trying or punish yourself for failing? Your inner voice is the first territory you must transform. Speaking clearly doesn't begin in the mouth. It begins in the mind. When you cultivate constructive internal dialogue, when you acknowledge your progress and allow yourself to learn, everything changes. Confidence in speaking doesn't come as a sudden revelation. It's built day by day, conversation by conversation. It's also important for you to know that you're not alone in this. Most people experience insecurity when speaking at some level, even those who seem to have it all under control. What changes is how they respond to that insecurity. Some face it, others avoid it. But you're here, listening to this, because you've chosen to face it, and that already sets you in motion. From now on, every time you feel afraid to speak, instead of running away or staying silent, you're going to observe yourself closely. You're going to notice what you feel, what you think, what you do. And little by little, you're going to intervene. You're going to speak, even if you tremble. You're going to express yourself, even if it's not perfect. You're going to practice, even if you make mistakes. Because that's the only way to conquer your voice. Remember this, your insecurity isn't a flaw. It's a sign. A sign that something inside you needs to be heard, validated, and strengthened. And this audiobook is a space for that. To help you release the burden of judgment, change your internal dialogue, regain connection with your body, and build a healthier relationship with your voice. It's not about eliminating fear completely, but about walking with it, continuing to speak despite it, making it part of the process, not an obstacle. And in doing so, you'll see how your way of expressing yourself changes, how your voice gains firmness, how your words become more organized, how your presence expands, and most importantly, how your perception of yourself transforms. Because when you express yourself from the truth, without fear and without masks, you don't just communicate better. You become someone who inspires. Chapter 3. The true meaning of being articulate. Being articulate isn't about impressing with grandiloquent words or unnecessary technical jargon. It's about getting your message across clearly, so that the listener understands exactly what you mean and, moreover, connects with you on an emotional and intellectual level. Being articulate is communicating with purpose, intention, and simplicity. Many people think that sounding intelligent requires using complicated vocabulary, but the truth is that effective communication occurs when the recipient understands the message effortlessly. It's not about embellishing what you say, but rather building bridges with your words. Imagine a doctor explaining a complex diagnosis to his patient using technical language the patient doesn't understand. Even if the doctor is saying something accurate, there's no true articulation if the message doesn't reach the other person clearly. Now imagine the same doctor explaining the same thing with simple words, clear analogies, and an empathetic tone. That second scenario is a true example of being articulate. An articulate person doesn't memorize speeches, but rather deeply understands what they want to convey. This allows them to adapt their words to the context, the audience, and the moment. It's like a musician who knows their instrument so well that they can improvise without losing harmony. Articulation is born from understanding, not embellishment. That's why those who master a subject usually speak clearly, while those who are unsure tend to hide behind vague or convoluted phrases. This difference is immediately noticeable. A leader who communicates with simple, direct words inspires confidence. A colleague who expresses themselves naturally generates closeness. A teacher who knows how to explain with concrete examples becomes unforgettable. Being articulate also involves mental organization. When you organize your ideas before speaking, your message flows logically. The listener follows you easily and, in the end, not only understands what you said, but also remembers your message. On the other hand, when you speak without structure, your ideas get lost in disjointed sentences, and even if you have something valuable to say, the impact is diluted. For example, if you're going to explain how to solve a problem, start by describing the problem clearly, then present the causes or implications, and finally offer a solution. This structure, although basic, allows your message to have shape, weight, and direction. Just as an architect needs plans to build a house, you need to organize your thoughts to build effective communication. Another key point is emotional connection. It's not enough for people to understand your words. They must feel that you speak authentically. Being articulate isn't speaking like a robot reciting perfectly structured sentences. It's showing yourself as human, present, and consistent with your emotions. A shaky but honest voice can be more powerful than a perfectly rehearsed but empty speech. What makes an articulate person memorable is not just what they say, but how they say it and from where they say it. There's a difference between speaking from ego and speaking with the intention to connect. True articulation occurs when what you think, feel, and say are aligned. Observe the people you admire for their speaking style. You'll notice they don't necessarily use complex words, but they do have clarity, rhythm, and a unique style. Some tell stories, others use simple examples, some are slow, others more forceful. But they all share one thing in common. They know what they want to say, why they're saying it, and how to convey it. That's being articulate. And the good news is, it's not an innate talent. It's a skill that can be trained. The more you listen to yourself, practice, and adjust your speaking style, the more articulate you become. It's like tuning an instrument. At first, it may sound off-key, but with constant practice, each note begins to resonate precisely. To begin developing the skill, you can practice explaining complex ideas in a simple way. For example, try explaining to a child what economics is or how the internet works. If you can do this without losing the essence of the topic, you're training your ability to be clear. You can also record yourself speaking about a topic you're familiar with and then listen to yourself. Do you understand yourself? Is what you said clear? Were there parts you could have expressed better? This feedback exercise is very powerful because it allows you to refine your style and notice patterns you may not have seen before. Another useful exercise is to rephrase what others say. When you hear an interesting idea in a conversation or on an audiobook, try repeating it in your own words. This trains your verbal agility and your ability to understand and convey messages clearly. In short, being articulate is a combination of clarity, organization, authenticity, and connection. It's not about sounding sophisticated, but about being understood. It's not about impressing, but about impacting. And it's not about talking a lot, but about saying what matters. When you achieve this, you not only become a better communicator, but also a better thinker. Because language doesn't just express what's on your mind, it also shapes how you see the world. And when you learn to speak clearly, you also learn to think clearly. That's the true power of being articulate. Chapter 4. Mental Structure. Think clear, speak clear. Speaking clearly begins long before the words leave your mouth. It begins in your mind, in how you structure your thoughts, in how you filter the important from the secondary, and in how you organize your ideas so they flow meaningfully. Often, people who seem to stumble over their words or get lost when communicating don't have a problem with expression, but with mental organization. If your mind is cluttered, your words will be too. Therefore, one of the fundamental pillars of speaking with confidence and clarity is learning to think with structure. Internal clarity automatically translates into external clarity. You can't convey something with certainty if you don't know exactly what you want to say, why you want to say it, and how you're going to say it. This is where the power of mental structure comes into play. Imagine you're asked to speak for 5 minutes on a topic you know well. You have the information in your head, but if you don't organize it, you'll likely start rambling, repeating ideas, or losing focus of the message. On the other hand, if you spend just a few minutes structuring your ideas before speaking, you're much more likely to have a fluent, clear, and effective speech. A powerful technique for this is the use of mind mapping. It's a visual tool where you place the central idea in the center of a page and then branch out related concepts. This allows you to see at a glance all the key points you want to cover, how they connect, and what logical order they should follow. It's ideal for presentations, important conversations, or even for answering complex questions with confidence. Another useful strategy is the use of outlines. Unlike mind maps, which are more free-form and visual, outlines follow a hierarchical logic, with main points, subpoints, and examples. This technique helps you prioritize and give a natural sequence to what you're going to communicate. For example, if you're going to talk about how to improve productivity, your outline could be 1. Introduction to the problem of low productivity. 2. Main causes. 3. Effective strategies. 4. Success stories. 5. Motivational conclusion. With this simple outline, your mind knows where to start, where to go, and how to close with impact. You're not improvising. You're guiding your listener along a clear path. Now, if you want an even simpler and more universal tool, you can apply the 3 key ideas technique. This technique consists of identifying 3 main points you want to convey on any topic. For example, if you're going to talk about the importance of reading, you can structure your message as follows. 1. Reading broadens your mind. 2. Reading enhances your vocabulary. 3. Reading improves your communication. 4. Reading encourages growth. 5. Reading encourages learning. 6. Reading encourages action. 7. Reading encourages action. 8. Reading encourages action. 9. Reading encourages action. 10. Reading encourages action. 11. Reading encourages action. 12. Reading encourages action. 13. Reading encourages action. 14. Reading encourages action. 15. Reading encourages action. 16. Reading encourages action. 17. Reading encourages action. 18. Reading encourages action. 19. Reading encourages action. 20. Reading encourages action. 21. Reading encourages action. 22. Reading improves your communication. 3. Reading makes you more empathetic. You can then develop each of these points with examples, data, or personal experiences. This formula is so effective because the human brain processes triads very well. It's easy for you to remember and easy for your audience to follow. Many TED Talks, political speeches, and marketing campaigns use this technique because it has a direct and lasting impact. When you apply these mental structures, your confidence increases because you know you won't go blank, you won't ramble, and you'll deliver a coherent message. You stop depending on inspiration or luck and start communicating with intention and mastery. For example, if you go to a job interview and are asked about your leadership experience, you can mentally use a 3-step structure. 1. A specific situation in which you led a team. 2. The actions you took to solve the problem. 3. The result obtained. This structure, also known as STAR, situation, task, action, result, is widely used by professionals to respond with impact in important contexts. But this isn't limited to the professional world. In your personal life, structuring your thoughts also allows you to have more effective conversations. If you want to talk to your partner about something that's bothering you, you can organize your thoughts before opening the conversation. 1. What you're feeling and why. 2. What specific behavior affects you. 3. What you'd like to change. This way, you avoid blaming, generalizing, or exploding emotionally. Your message becomes clear, respectful, and constructive. This clarity transforms the outcomes of your interactions. Mental structure also helps you identify whether what you want to say is truly necessary. We often speak just to fill the silence, out of anxiety, or to impress. But when you organize your thoughts beforehand, you can consciously decide what's worth saying and what isn't. This makes you more focused, more interesting, and more persuasive. You don't say too much or too little. You say just the right amount and with intention. And that's power. Furthermore, having a clear mental structure allows you to improvise confidently. Paradoxically, the more prepared you are, the freer you are when speaking. If you know your central ideas well, you can adapt to the audience's reactions, pause, tell anecdotes, or adjust your tone without getting lost along the way. That's the difference between someone who improvises based on intuition and someone who improvises from clarity. One relies on luck, the other on preparation. Finally, you don't need to be an expert in public speaking or have a vast vocabulary to apply these structures. You just need a little conscious practice. You can start today. The next time you're about to communicate something important, take 2 minutes to ask yourself, what is my main idea? What 3 points do I want to emphasize? In what order am I going to present them? And then notice how your way of speaking changes, how you feel more in control, and how others understand you better. Speaking clearly is not a talent reserved for a select few. It's a skill that is built from thinking. Think clearly, speak clearly. And you'll see how the world begins to listen to you differently. Chapter 5. Language that connects. Clarity plus intention plus energy. Speaking clearly and with intention requires first understanding that language is a tool for connection, not confusion. Many people believe that to impress when speaking, they must use complex words or long phrases, when in reality, what makes the most impact is the clarity, intention, and energy with which a message is expressed. Connecting language has 3 key elements: clarity that eliminates doubt, intention that guides the message, and energy that engages the other person's attention. Everything else is secondary, even counterproductive. Speaking without clarity is like shooting an arrow without direction. You may get somewhere, but not where you intended. Therefore, it is vital to begin by eliminating the mental noise that often translates into filler words, unnecessary repetitions, or phrases that don't convey anything concrete. Clarity is trained by starting with oneself. What exactly do I want to say? Why is it important? How can I express it in a way that the other person can understand effortlessly? The mind tends to wander if it's not well trained, and this is noticeable when speaking. A person who hasn't clearly defined their main point is likely to ramble, and the listener will quickly lose interest. The second pillar, intention, acts as the GPS for your message. Speaking with intention means being clear about the effect you want to generate in the listener. Do you want to inform, inspire, convince, or connect emotionally? It's not just about what you say, but the purpose with which you say it. The same phrase can sound empty or transformative depending on the intention with which it is expressed. For example, saying, "We need to change," out of obligation is not the same as saying it as a passionate invitation to growth. In public presentations, personal conversations, or even on a work call, intention guides tone, pace, and word choice. When your intention is clear, your words become more powerful and your message becomes more human. The listener perceives this immediately, even if they can't explain it logically. They feel that what you are saying has weight, that it has life. And then there's energy, the emotional component of language. You can have the clearest message with the best intentions, but if you deliver it without soul, it will lose impact. Energy doesn't mean shouting or speaking quickly. It means injecting authentic emotion into your words. Your voice conveys more than the words themselves. A monotonous, unchanging voice can ruin even the best speech. On the contrary, a voice that moves with emotion, with strategic pauses and genuine modulation, can turn a simple message into something memorable. This is where your own emotional connection to what you're saying comes into play. Do you care about your message? Does it move you? Does it represent you? Because if it doesn't, it will be very difficult to convey that emotion to others. That's why speaking with energy first requires believing in what you're saying. You can't fake passion, and your audience detects that. What you can do is reconnect with your message, with its value, with how it can benefit others. From there, the words flow with more strength and authenticity. Now, how do you practice these three elements? Start by simplifying your vocabulary. It's not about narrowing down your language, but rather using words that anyone can understand. Replace technical or complicated terms with simple synonyms. Use short, direct, straightforward sentences. Then, work on your intention by writing before you speak. What do I want to achieve with this conversation or presentation? What emotion do I want to provoke? This clarity of intention will help you filter everything you're going to say, leaving only the essentials. Finally, energy is trained with vocal awareness. Record yourself speaking and listen carefully. Does your voice sound flat? Where could you pause for emphasis? Which words could carry more emotional power? This exercise not only improves your voice, it also sharpens your perception of the real impact of your words. Another powerful technique is to observe great communicators. Notice how they use pauses, how they emphasize certain words, how their energy grows when they address topics they're passionate about. It's not about imitating, but about identifying effective patterns and adapting them to your style. A good communicator isn't born, it's trained. And this training begins with paying attention to what you say, how you say it, and what effect it has on others. The combination of clarity, intention, and energy not only improves your communication, it transforms your presence. People begin to see you as someone who knows what they're talking about, who says it with purpose, and who also delivers it with life. That's the kind of voice people respect, follow, and remember. A simple example can illustrate everything. Imagine you need to ask a colleague for help finishing a project. If you use vague language, "Hey, if you can, help me with that thing I mentioned," you probably won't get a committed response. But if you use clarity, "I need you to help me with the results report," intention, because it's key for tomorrow's presentation, and energy, "I trust that with you we'll achieve something excellent," then the impact changes completely. This same structure can be applied to sales, leadership, personal relationships, job interviews, or any other human interaction. Because when you learn to speak with clarity, intention, and energy, you don't just improve your way of expressing yourself. You multiply your influence and your ability to generate change. Ultimately, the language that connects isn't born from a magic formula, but from a conscious practice. It's a daily commitment to communicating authentically, without masks, without unnecessary embellishments. It's giving yourself permission to speak as yourself, with your words, but with more precision, more presence, and more passion. And when that happens, something powerful happens. You no longer need to try so hard to be heard, because your voice, on its own, begins to resonate strongly with others. That's when you discover it's not just about speaking well. It's about transforming each word into a tool for real connection. And that's what turns an ordinary voice into a truly unforgettable one. Chapter 6. Daily Training for Your Voice and Verbal Presence. A powerful voice isn't born, it's trained. Just as an athlete trains their body to compete, Anyone who wants to speak clearly and confidently must dedicate time to strengthening their vocal instrument. The voice isn't just a sound we emit. It's a projection of what we feel, think, and believe about ourselves. Therefore, vocal training not only transforms how others hear you, but also how you perceive yourself when you express yourself. Let's start with a key principle: breathing. Most people breathe shallowly, using only the upper chest. This not only creates a weak and shaky voice, but also increases anxiety when speaking. The first step is learning to breathe from your diaphragm. You can practice lying on your back with one hand on your abdomen. When you inhale deeply, your belly should rise, not your chest. This type of breathing is natural, deep, and stabilizes your tone when speaking. Repeat this practice daily for 5 minutes to train your body to breathe with intention. Once you've mastered diaphragmatic breathing, you can move on to training your voice's volume and projection. Projection doesn't mean shouting, but rather sending your voice with direction, as if speaking to someone across the room. Try phrases like, "I'm here and I have something valuable to say," first in a low voice, then medium, and finally loud, without losing clarity. Record yourself at each level and listen to how your verbal presence changes. A strong, firm voice is born of control, not tension. If you feel that forcing your voice tires you out or makes your throat hurt, it's a sign that you're using strength rather than technique. Relax your shoulders, open your chest, and keep your neck loose as you speak. Tone is also vital. A flat tone can sound bored or insecure, while a high-pitched tone conveys nervousness. The goal is to find a neutral tone, but with natural variations depending on the message you're conveying. You can practice reading a text aloud with different emotions: joy, anger, calmness, urgency. This dynamic trains you to have emotional control over your voice. You can also use the emotional mirror technique. In front of a mirror, say your name followed by an affirmation such as, "I have a clear and confident voice." Observe your facial expression, your posture, and how your voice changes when you believe what you're saying. Another key aspect is pacing. Speaking too quickly gives the impression of insecurity or anxiety, while speaking too slowly can lose the listener's attention. Find a pace that exudes confidence. A practical way is to record yourself telling a 60-second personal story. Then, listen to it and analyze whether you understand yourself, whether you breathe between sentences, and whether the pauses are well placed. Pauses, by the way, are a powerful tool. A well-placed pause after an important idea allows the message to sink in the listener's mind. Don't be afraid of silence. Use it with intention. Now let's talk about diction. Many people have good ideas, but their way of articulating words doesn't help others understand them. Practicing tongue twisters and phrases that require precise mouth movements is ideal for improving. A simple exercise is to repeat, "3 sad tigers swallow wheat in a wheat field," first slowly, then quickly, making sure each word is clear. Another useful exercise is to place a pencil between your teeth and read aloud for a minute. Then remove the pencil and reread the same text. You'll notice how your pronunciation improves almost immediately. Verbal presence isn't just about what you say, but how you accompany it with your body. Practice speaking in front of a mirror, observing your posture. Do you slouch? Do you cross your arms? Do you avoid eye contact with yourself? All of this is reflected when you speak in public or in important conversations. Correct your posture. Keep your feet firm, your spine straight, your gaze forward, and your shoulders relaxed. The coherence between your voice and your body generates an authentic and powerful presence. Also, dedicate specific times of the day to practicing your communication. You can establish a 5 to 10-minute morning routine where you read aloud a passage from a book, a famous speech, or a personal affirmation. This habit, over time, completely transforms your verbal expression. If you prefer a more dynamic routine, you can record a short audio recording each day talking about a topic you're passionate about, and then listen to it to improve your tone, timing, and clarity. Finally, remember that training your voice is also training your mind. If your internal dialogue is one of criticism, doubt, or fear, it will be reflected in how your voice sounds. Change that rhetoric. Before speaking in public or having an important conversation, mentally repeat affirmations like, "My voice is my tool of impact. Every word I say has power. I am ready to connect." These phrases activate your inner confidence and allow your voice to align with your intention. Speaking with a clear, firm, and authentic voice isn't a privilege of the few, but a skill that is built with perseverance. What was once a weakness can become your greatest strength. Your voice is a reflection of your identity. Train it, nurture it, and express it with the conviction of someone who knows they have something valuable to contribute to the world. Chapter 7. How to talk in front of other people without blocking yourself. Stage fright is not a defect, but rather a natural human response to the perception of social threat. Speaking in front of others, especially when many people are looking at you, can trigger the same reaction in the brain as facing physical danger. Therefore, it's essential to learn to recognize this response in order to manage it with concrete tools. Most people who speak fluently in front of crowds today have at some point felt that lump in their throat, that anxiety in their stomach, or that trembling in their voice. The difference is that they learn to train their body and mind not to be dominated by these sensations, but rather to use them to their advantage as mobilizing energy. The first step to not blocking yourself when speaking in public is to accept that it's completely normal to feel nervous, and that you're not alone. From this acceptance, you can begin working with techniques that transform those nerves into presence, connection, and clarity when expressing yourself. One of the most powerful tools is body control. The body speaks even before words. Therefore, it's important to practice open postures, keeping your chest slightly raised, your gaze forward, and your feet firmly on the ground. When your body adopts a posture of confidence, your mind begins to align with that body signal, generating a feeling of greater inner strength. It's also helpful to practice slow walks while you speak or natural hand gestures that accompany your words. These actions not only help you release accumulated tension, but also communicate to your audience that you're comfortable with yourself, even if you feel a little nervous inside. The body is an anchor, a base from which you can project confidence even if you feel otherwise. Practicing this frequently creates a physical memory that is activated every time you stand in front of an audience. Another fundamental technique is conscious breathing. Before speaking, take a few seconds to inhale deeply through your nose, hold it for a few moments, and then exhale slowly through your mouth. This simple gesture has the power to calm the nervous system, reduce your heart rate, and focus your attention on the present. Practicing abdominal breathing throughout the day strengthens your ability to remain calm even in times of pressure. If you take 3 to 5 deep, slow breaths before speaking, you will be preparing your body and mind to express yourself from a more serene state. This technique, although seemingly basic, makes a huge difference in how you feel and how you sound. A voice projected from a state of calm and with proper breathing sounds firmer, clearer, and more convincing. Positive visualization is another resource that transforms your public speaking experience. Before a presentation, take a few minutes to imagine yourself speaking confidently, seeing people react positively, feeling fluidity and connection in your communication. Visualize that moment as if it were already happening and experience it in detail. This mental exercise prepares your subconscious to accept that scenario as possible and desirable, reducing anticipatory anxiety. The more you practice visualizing yourself succeeding, the easier it will be for your body and voice to reflect it when the actual moment arrives. This technique doesn't replace practice, but it enhances the results of each rehearsal, reinforcing inner confidence from a deeper level. Finally, conscious practice is the foundation of all progress. It's not just about talking for the sake of talking, but about deliberately training yourself, seeking to improve one specific aspect each time. You can practice in front of a mirror, videotape yourself, or ask for feedback from trusted people. Observe not only what you say, but how you say it. Your tone, your speed, your pauses, your body language. Speak out loud every day, even for 5 minutes, about any topic. Imagine yourself in front of an audience and share your ideas naturally. This conscious repetition strengthens the brain circuits associated with verbal expression, making speaking clearly and confidently second nature. Frequent practice, even if brief, has more impact than extensive but sporadic practice. It is in daily consistency that true transformation is forged. Speaking in front of others without blocking isn't a matter of luck or innate talent, but rather of preparation, self-knowledge, and training. Every time you confront fear with a tool, you are teaching your mind that you can successfully navigate the moment. Over time, what seems like a daunting challenge today will become familiar and even pleasant terrain. It's not about completely eliminating fear, but rather about walking with it, transforming its energy into presence, and using each experience as a stepping stone toward your most confident, clearest, and most connected version of yourself. Because when you speak from your center, from practice, and from a genuine desire to communicate, your voice ceases to be just a sound. It becomes a force that inspires, moves, and impacts. Chapter 8. Active Listening, Your Best Ally for Speaking Better. When it comes to improving communication, most people focus solely on what they're going to say. They think about how to express themselves better, how to sound more confident, or how to structure their ideas. But there's a powerful and often overlooked truth. Good listening is one of the most powerful tools for speaking clearly, accurately, and confidently. Active listening isn't simply about remaining silent while the other person speaks. It's a mental attitude, a physical disposition, and a skill that, when mastered, completely transforms your conversations. Active listening allows you to detect nuances, interpret hidden emotions, read between the lines, and, above all, respond with intelligence and empathy. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, a good listener becomes a magnet for connection. One of the biggest mistakes when communicating is thinking we have to have the perfect answer right away. This anxiety to respond leads us to disconnect from what the other person is really saying. While someone is speaking, many people's minds are already working on what they're going to say next, interrupting, comparing their own stories, or simply getting distracted. This not only blocks understanding but also disrupts the natural flow of the conversation. Active listening breaks that pattern. It requires you to be present, focused, attentive not only to the words, but also to the tone, intention, and nonverbal language. And it is precisely this presence that generates more fluid, more accurate, and more human responses. To develop authentic active listening, the first step is to train your mind to be in the present moment. This means observing without judging. Stop immediately interpreting what the other person says. Don't assume hidden agendas or fill in the gaps with your own narrative. Active listening is like tuning into a clear frequency. You turn off the internal noise to clearly capture what's coming in. And when you do this, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see the world from the other person's perspective. This deep understanding gives you an immense advantage, because then your responses are no longer reactive, but reflective. You don't speak impulsively. You speak from awareness. Another fundamental element of active listening is eye contact. Looking at the other person while they're speaking conveys respect, attention, and openness. It's not a fixed or intimidating stare, but rather a gentle, interested gaze that says, "I'm listening. What you're saying matters to me." Along with this, your posture should match this disposition. Your body leaning slightly forward, your arms uncrossed, and your gestures indicating that you're following the conversation. Nod your head slightly, express interest with natural facial expressions, or even repeat key words the other person has said to show that you're connected. All of this reinforces an atmosphere of trust where communication flows much more easily. And here comes the most transformative point. When you listen deeply, you improve your way of speaking. Because what you say stops being generic and starts being precise. By capturing exactly what the other person needs, what they really asked, or what they're feeling, you can choose the right words, the right tone, and the perfect pace. This is especially useful in important, difficult, or emotionally charged conversations. A good listener has the ability to defuse conflicts before they escalate, to calm tensions with a single sentence, and to reconnect when the conversation seems to be breaking down. You don't need to be brilliant. You just need to be truly present. In addition, listening attentively also helps you identify opportunities. While others miss crucial details because they're absorbed in what they want to say, you can detect the true intentions, hidden desires, fears, or insecurities behind words. This allows you to intervene intelligently, add real value, and become memorable in every interaction. Whether in a personal conversation, a work meeting, or a public presentation, a good listener has an internal compass that guides them clearly. It's also important to practice what's known as reflective listening. This means that, after listening, you can paraphrase what the other person has said to confirm that you understood correctly. Phrases like, "So what you're saying is," or "If I understand you correctly, what you're worried about is," validate the other person, make them feel understood, and reassure you that you're on the same page. This technique, although simple, has incredible power to strengthen bonds, dispel misunderstandings, and demonstrate emotional maturity. Finally, active listening also requires patience. Sometimes the other person needs time to organize their thoughts, to say something uncomfortable, or to express an emotion. Don't rush them. Don't complete their sentences. Leave space. Respect the silences. Often, in those seconds of pause, the most important thing happens. The other person feels safe, dares to be honest, and true communication emerges. Those who know how to hold that space, without discomfort or haste, become open channels where words flow authentically. And like everything in communication, active listening also requires training. You can start with simple exercises such as listening to an audio recording and repeating exactly what was said, practicing conversations where you only ask questions without giving your opinion, or setting aside times during the day where you simply observe and listen without interruptions. As you develop this skill, you'll notice that your speaking automatically improves. You'll feel more confident, more connected, and clearer. Because when you listen well, you speak better. When you understand others, you can communicate with greater impact, without effort or artifice. Active listening isn't just a technique, it's a way of being. And when you adopt it as a lifestyle, you discover that you don't need to force your words to be heard. Because your attention becomes your presence. And your presence communicates more than 1,000 speeches. Chapter 9. Powerful communication in difficult conversations. When we face a difficult conversation, our minds often enter a state of alert. Our bodies tense, our voice trembles, and mental clarity seems to evaporate. This happens because disagreements or emotionally intense moments activate our primitive fight, flight, or freeze responses. In this state, it's not only harder to think clearly, but also to communicate with firmness, empathy, and purpose. And yet, it's precisely in these moments that our way of speaking has the greatest impact. Speaking confidently doesn't mean dominating others or imposing our point of view. Rather, it means expressing what we feel and think with authenticity, respect, and confidence, even when the situation is tense or contentious. In these situations, clarity is power. But it's not just about telling things like they are. It's about how we say them. The tone of voice, the pace at which we speak, the emotional energy we convey with each word. All of these have the power to transform a tense conversation into an opportunity for connection or breakthrough. One of the first keys to handling difficult conversations with confidence is regulating your body. This seems simple, but it's essential. If you're sitting, sit with your back straight and your feet firmly planted on the floor. If you're standing, make sure you have an open posture, without crossing your arms or tensing your shoulders. Inhale deeply through your nose and exhale through your mouth. This conscious breathing grounds you in the present and helps calm your mind. Before responding to a criticism, a complaint, or a verbal attack, pause. You don't have to react immediately. That small space between the stimulus and your response is where your power lies. It's there where you can decide not to give in to the automatic impulse to defend or attack, and choose, instead, to speak from clarity. Say quietly to yourself, I have time. I don't need to rush. I can respond from my center. This brief affirmation gives you back control. Another key principle is to speak from the facts, not from judgments. When a conversation becomes emotionally charged, we tend to use words that generalize, accuse, or exaggerate. You always do this. You never listen to me. You're impossible. These phrases trigger the other person's defense, who will stop listening and instead start justifying themselves. Instead, focus on describing what happened objectively. When you interrupted my idea in the meeting, I felt frustrated because I couldn't get my point across. This way of communicating acknowledges your experience without blaming and opens the door to dialogue. A powerful tool in these types of scenarios is the I feel, I need technique. It involves expressing what you feel and what you need without making demands. For example, I feel disconnected when there are no replies to my messages. I need to know my voice is heard. This formula allows you to express vulnerability powerfully. Speaking from your emotions, not from accusations, creates a more human space. Now, firmness is also essential. Speaking clearly doesn't mean overly softening what you want to say for fear of making others uncomfortable. If you need to set boundaries, do so respectfully, but without hesitation. Instead of saying, maybe this isn't working out quite right, say, I've noticed this approach isn't helping us, and I think we need to try another route. The difference lies in the confidence with which you formulate your ideas. And that confidence isn't born of harshness, but of inner conviction. In moments of tension, Avoid sarcasm, passive-aggressive silences, or ambiguous phrases. Don't beat around the bush. Ambiguity breeds more uncertainty and mistrust. The clearer and more direct you are, the more confidence you convey, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. A practical tip: before a difficult conversation, rehearse your ideas out loud, as if it were pre-training. This allows you to find the right words, practice your tone, and anticipate possible responses from the other person. The more prepared you are, the less anxiety you will feel. It's also helpful to anticipate the emotions that might arise on the other side. If you know the person might get angry or saddened by what you're about to say, don't ignore it. Include it in your message. For example, "I know this may be uncomfortable to hear, but I'm saying this with the intention of improving our relationship." These types of statements reduce tension because they demonstrate empathy without losing clarity. Another key aspect is managing silence. In tense conversations, many people feel the need to fill every second with words. But silence, when used consciously, is a powerful resource. Pausing after an important statement allows the other person to process what you've said. It also gives you time to observe their reaction and adjust your approach. Pausing isn't passivity, it's presence. Remember, too, that not all difficult conversations are resolved in a single encounter. Sometimes, the wisest thing you can do is say, "I'd like to reflect on this and continue the conversation later." This isn't running away, it's honoring the need for clarity and mutual respect. Finally, don't judge yourself if it doesn't come out perfectly. Speaking confidently in tense moments is a skill that develops with experience. Every time you choose to express yourself honestly, even if it's uncomfortable, you are strengthening your authentic communication muscle. And every time you manage to remain calm, even if you're trembling inside, you are reprogramming your emotional response to speak from a centered, not a reactive, perspective. Because communicating powerfully in the midst of conflict isn't about shouting louder, but about speaking more clearly. It's not about always being right, but about having the firm intention to build understanding. And that, when cultivated, transforms not only difficult conversations but the entire quality of your relationships. Speaking confidently in these moments is, in reality, an act of inner leadership. It means prioritizing understanding over ego, truth over comfort, connection over the need to win. Those who develop this skill not only improve their communication, it changes their entire lives. Chapter 10. Speak with confidence in meetings, interviews, and in public. Speaking confidently in professional contexts isn't an ability exclusive to a select few, but rather a skill that can be trained, refined, and mastered. In today's environment, where meetings, interviews, and public presentations have become key spaces for professional and personal growth, knowing how to communicate your ideas with clarity, confidence, and presence is more important than ever. Confidence isn't improvised. It's built through preparation, awareness of your surroundings, and mastery of your body and verbal language. This chapter seeks to integrate all of the above elements to help you stand out when you need it most, when you're being watched, listened to, and expected to be valuable. Let's start with meetings. Whether you're participating in a meeting with your team, a video call with partners, or a work session with your superiors, it's essential to enter the space with a prepared mindset. Before a meeting, identify your main objective. What do you need to communicate? What results do you hope to achieve? Being clear about this will prevent rambling and increase your effectiveness. Don't underestimate the power of a prior structure. You can prepare your interventions in blocks of 3 key ideas, as we saw earlier. Start with a clear opening, develop your points in an orderly manner, and close with a powerful idea. This formula gives you a solid foundation on which to base your speech. Body language is another fundamental pillar. Sitting upright, maintaining eye contact with everyone present, and using measured gestures project confidence. Avoid hiding your hands, looking at the floor, or adopting closed postures. These gestures send signals of insecurity, even if your words are solid. Practice maintaining a neutral but open posture, and accompany your ideas with gestures that reinforce what you're saying. This coherence between verbal and nonverbal communication is what generates a professional presence that inspires respect and attention. In interviews, the key is to display confidence without arrogance, preparation without rigidity, and enthusiasm without exaggeration. Remember that an interview is not an interrogation, but a structured conversation in which you, too, are assessing whether the space is right for you. Prepare answers to common questions, but don't memorize them word for word. Instead, familiarize yourself with your experiences, accomplishments, and strengths so you can respond authentically and spontaneously. Use the mirror technique. Simulate interviews in front of a mirror or record yourself with your cell phone to review how you speak, how you sound, and what you project. Observe your gestures, your voice, and your words. The mere act of listening to yourself and correcting yourself builds your confidence. Voice control is also essential. If you speak too softly, others will perceive hesitation. If you speak at an exaggerated or monotonous volume, you could seem aggressive or bored. Balance lies in speaking with a firm tone that conveys authority and modulation that maintains attention. Pauses play a crucial role. Don't be afraid of brief silences. Often, a strategic pause increases the power of your message, allows listeners to assimilate what you've said, and gives you time to think. Pausing isn't weakness, it's mastery. Now, in public presentations, the challenge may feel greater, but the principles are the same. Advanced preparation is your greatest ally. Rehearse your presentation, but don't memorize every word. Know the content so well that you can explain it as if you were telling it to a friend. This way, you'll avoid nerves shutting you down or making you forget what you wanted to say. Organize your presentation into thematic sections, and if you use slides, keep them simple, visual, and serve as a support, not a script. Breathe deeply before you begin. A few conscious breaths oxygenate the brain and calm the nervous system. When you speak, make eye contact with different people in the audience and maintain a steady cadence. You may feel nervous at first, but those nerves can be transformed into positive energy if you stay focused on the value you're providing, not on yourself. Public speaking isn't about impressing, but about impact. And that impact comes when you connect with clarity, emotion, and purpose. During any presentation, whether professional or public, remember that you can rely on mental anchors. These are phrases you've practiced and can be used to begin each section. For example, what I want to emphasize now is, secondly, it's important to consider that, let me close this idea with. These structural phrases help you maintain the flow without getting lost, especially when the environment demands speed and clarity. They are small verbal lifelines that give security and order to your presentation. Finally, don't forget that speaking confidently is also knowing how to listen. In meetings, interviews, or presentations with questions, your answer will be more accurate if you listen carefully and respond directly to the point. Don't be afraid to ask someone to repeat a question if you don't fully understand it. This isn't a sign of weakness, but rather of care and professionalism. And when faced with a question you don't know how to answer right away, you can calmly say, I don't have all the information right now, but I can research it and get back to you later. That, said calmly, inspires more confidence than fabricating a forced answer. Confidence is trained, projected, and earned. And you already have the tools to do it. Master the structure, train your presence, strengthen your voice, and practice in real-life scenarios. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start practicing now, even with small daily challenges. Because every well-spoken word in a professional setting can open doors, strengthen your reputation, and position you as someone who knows what they're talking about, and says it with power. Chapter 11. Techniques for communicating with impact in a few minutes. When time is limited, every word counts, and clarity becomes your best ally. In a fast-paced world where opportunities can last just seconds, the ability to communicate an impactful message in just a few minutes is an indisputable competitive advantage. It's no longer just about speaking well, but about being memorable in the shortest amount of time possible. This requires precise, emotionally charged, and intentionally structured communication. In situations like an interview, an executive meeting, an important appointment, or even a casual conversation with an unexpected opportunity, having the ability to convey your message clearly, directly, and powerfully can make the difference between going unnoticed or leaving a lasting impression. It all starts with knowing the essential point you want to communicate. Before speaking, ask yourself, what do I want this person to remember after hearing me? That question is your compass. An effective pitch, for example, doesn't need to detail every aspect of your idea or project. What it requires is to convey a powerful essence, something that sparks the other person's curiosity, excites them, or motivates them to want to know more. That essence should be built on 3 pillars: conceptual clarity, concise narrative structure, and emotional charge. Conceptual clarity implies avoiding unnecessary technical jargon or fancy words. Concise narrative structure requires following a logical sequence: problem, proposal, benefit. And emotional charge requires communicating with passion, with intention in your voice, with energy in your gaze, with presence in your body language. Because even in just a few minutes, your energy can be more convincing than your words. When you're short on time, avoid long introductions. Start with the essentials. Imagine someone gives you 30 seconds to answer, "What do you do?" Most people start with hesitations or generalities. But if you answer with a phrase like, "I help people overcome their fear of public speaking and transform it into personal power to lead," you're making an impact. You're using active language, conveying a clear solution, and creating an image in the listener's mind. That's the difference between sounding ordinary or unforgettable. Use verbs that express action. Avoid passive or vague phrases like, "I like to help," or "I work in something related to." And switch to statements that position you with authority and confidence. Another essential technique is the anchor message, a short, powerful, and memorable idea. Great communicators use this resource all the time. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't need an hour for the world to remember, "I have a dream." Steve Jobs shocked the media by saying, "Today Apple is going to reinvent the telephone." An anchor message is like a seed. If it's powerful, it germinates in the mind of others and grows on its own. To achieve this, think about how you can summarize your proposal, your personal brand, or your story in a powerful phrase, charged with emotion or novelty. Practice it out loud until it sounds natural, not like a memorized repetition, but like a genuine statement. You must also master your pace. When you're short on time, the most common mistake is speaking too quickly, as if you're trying to pack everything into a tight bag. But the impact isn't in the speed, but in the pause. Learning to strategically pause between ideas builds tension, focuses attention, and conveys confidence. Don't underestimate the power of silence. A well-placed pause after a key statement makes that statement resonate more strongly in the listener's mind. For example, I don't just design logos. I create visual identities that make a brand unforgettable. Pause. In just 3 seconds. That pause creates anticipation, and the punchline sticks. Another resource is to use short stories. Even in just 1 minute, you can include a micro-story that connects emotionally. For example, a year ago, a woman told me she trembled when speaking in front of her team. 3 sessions later, she was able to confidently lead a global meeting. That's what I do. In 20 seconds, you've just shown what you do, who you help, and how you impact it, and you did it with emotion. Stories activate areas of the brain linked to empathy, and they ensure that the message is not only understood, but also felt. If you're going to communicate an idea in an elevator pitch, structure your message in 3 parts: the hook, the proposal, and the closing. The hook can be a provocative question, a shocking statistic, or an emotional statement. The proposal is what you do or what you offer, and the closing is a call to action or a powerful statement. For example, did you know that 70% of people fear public speaking more than they fear death? I train leaders to turn that fear into their greatest tool. Want to know how? That message takes no more than 20 seconds, but it opens the door to a conversation. Confidence is key. Even if you have the best message, if you deliver it with a shaky voice, evasive eyes, or a hunched posture, the impact is diluted. So before you speak, take a deep breath, align your posture, lift your chest, and plant your feet firmly on the ground. Your body should be saying, "I am confident in what I'm about to say." And mentally repeat an anchor phrase that reinforces your confidence. I have value to contribute. I am clear, direct, and memorable. This affirmation shifts your internal energy and projects outward. Finally, remember that communicating quickly isn't about limiting yourself, it's about focusing. You don't need to say everything, just the essentials with power. Great ideas don't depend on time, they depend on how you present them. If you practice these principles, if you structure your messages with intention, if you train your body and voice to support your words, you will be able to communicate with impact even in the briefest moments. Because when you know who you are, what value you deliver, and how to do it with clarity and emotion, every minute with you becomes a transformative experience for your listener. Chapter 12. Build your personal speaking style. Speaking confidently isn't about imitating great speakers or sounding like someone you're not. It's about finding your voice, your tone, your authentic way of communicating. Because true confidence isn't born from a mold, but from authenticity. When you speak from your core, without masks or pretenses, people feel it. They connect with you because they don't see a polished, forced version, but a real, honest, and human presence. The problem is that many people think that to speak well, they have to sound like someone else. And that constant comparison creates insecurity. You start to think you don't speak clearly enough, that your tone is too soft, that you lack humor, or that your delivery isn't professional enough. But the truth is, we all have a natural communication style that, when strengthened and refined, can be as impactful as that of any great speaker. Discovering your personal style requires observing yourself honestly and without judgment. What words do you use frequently? What is your speaking rhythm? Do you express yourself better with examples, metaphors, data, or anecdotes? Are you more deliberate or more enthusiastic? Is your body language more restrained or more expressive? These questions don't have right or wrong answers. They only have answers from you. And that you is the starting point. The goal isn't to change who you are, but to amplify your voice from awareness. And that means enhancing what makes you unique. If you're thoughtful, you can make each word carry weight. If you're energetic, you can convey enthusiasm. If you're sensitive, you can touch deep chords with your way of saying things. All styles can be powerful if they're deeply rooted in your identity. Authenticity also includes your personal expressions. We often try to avoid filler words, local expressions, or signature phrases for fear of sounding unprofessional. But if these expressions are part of your way of speaking and you use them intentionally, they can become a trademark. Think of communicators who have made their own words a hallmark. It's not about exaggerating your style, but rather embracing it. A well-placed expression, a unique way of closing ideas or beginning your sentences can become something people remember about you. Of course, this requires balance. It's not about speaking without a filter, but rather about building a refined version of yourself, more conscious and more confident, yet deeply genuine. To build your personal style, you also need to put yourself out there. No one finds their voice in silence. You have to speak, make mistakes, correct yourself, observe yourself, and keep talking. You can start by recording yourself explaining a topic you're familiar with or sharing a story. Then, listen to yourself with a constructive attitude. What tone do you use? Where do you seem most fluent? Where do you lose energy? Over time, you'll begin to notice patterns. Your strengths, your areas for improvement, your unique resources. You can also ask trusted people for feedback, not so they can tell you whether you speak well or poorly, but so they can tell you how you make them feel when you speak. Because communication isn't just about conveying ideas, it's about provoking emotions. And that ability is trained through conscious presence. Another fundamental aspect of your style is your pace. Some people are naturally fast, others slower and more deliberate. Neither is better than the other. The important thing is that your pace is aligned with your message and your energy. If you're telling an emotional story, a slow pace with silences can create depth. If you're sharing an exciting idea, a more agile pace can convey that enthusiasm. Your pace isn't something you have to change, but something you must learn to modulate with intention. The same goes for your tone. We all have a natural palette of tones when we speak. Some are higher, some are lower. Some are softer, some are firmer. Discover your comfortable range and play within it to vary your expression. Because speaking with impact isn't about sounding the same all the time, but rather knowing when to raise your pitch, when to lower it, when to pause, and when to emphasize a key word. And don't forget the power of your body. Your style is also expressed through your posture, your hands, your gaze. Observe how you move when you're comfortable and confident. That's your natural body language. Now bring it to your speaking moments. Walk the way you walk when you're relaxed. Gesture the way you do when you're telling an anecdote with emotion. Observe how you look when you're talking to someone you care about. That naturalness communicates more than 1,000 forced techniques. Authenticity is presence. And presence isn't manufactured. It's trained from within. One of the biggest mistakes when seeking confidence in speaking is trying to eliminate all imperfections. As if the goal were to sound perfect, without errors, without hesitations, without pauses. But that's impossible and also inhuman. What truly generates connection is naturalness. A sincere pause, a spontaneous smile, even a small mistake followed by a light laugh, can strengthen your credibility. Because they show that you are present, that you are being yourself. Don't strive to be perfect. Strive to be real. With intention, with preparation, but real. Finally, your personal style is also tied to your values. What do you stand for when you speak? What tone do you choose when addressing important issues? From what place do you communicate? People remember not only what you said, but how you said it and why you said it. If your message comes from an authentic place, if your words are connected to what you value, your voice will be unmistakable. Speaking with confidence is ultimately an act of identity. It's declaring with every word, "This is who I am. This is what I think. This is how I feel. And I say it clearly." Therefore, building your personal speaking style isn't the final destination, but a journey. It's a constant practice of self-knowledge, self-acceptance, and intention. And every time you choose to speak from that place, you're strengthening not only your communication, but also your connection with yourself and with others. Because when you speak as yourself, without masks, with a firm voice and an honest gaze, you're not just heard. You're felt. You're believed. And you're remembered. Conclusion: the new you that expresses itself without doubt. Throughout this transformative journey, you've explored the fundamental keys to becoming a person who communicates with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. You've learned that speaking confidently isn't a skill exclusive to a fortunate few, but rather a skill that can be cultivated with knowledge, intention, and practice. In each chapter, you've unlocked essential parts of yourself, from overcoming stage fright to mastering active listening, from controlling your body to polishing your message in difficult conversations or under pressure. Now, in this conclusion, it's not about saying goodbye, but rather opening the door to a new stage, that of the new you who expresses herself without hesitation. You've already taken the first step. You've decided to train your inner and outer voice. Now comes the most powerful part, keeping that practice alive, constant, and connected to your purpose. Because communication isn't simply making sounds or stringing together phrases. It's a silent affirmation of who you are. It's a way to make your presence felt in the world, to influence, to build bridges, to resolve conflicts, and to inspire others. And like all art, it's perfected through conscious repetition. Don't wait until you feel ready to speak. Speak. Practice. Correct. Learn. And speak again. You'll see how your voice grows with you. Remember everything you've learned. You know how to regulate your breathing to maintain control even under pressure. You've discovered the power of posture and gaze. You've integrated tools to overcome mental and physical blocks in front of an audience. You've learned to organize your ideas, use pauses, intonation, and body language, and read your interlocutor sensitively. You've recognized that active listening isn't a strategy, but rather a posture of respect that enriches your responses and makes you a much more confident communicator. And most importantly, you've understood that true power in speaking comes from aligning your message with your authenticity. Don't compare yourself to anyone. Don't imitate styles that don't represent you. The world already has enough generic voices. It needs yours. Your way of seeing things, your story, your tone, your humor, your energy. When you speak from what you truly believe, the message is enhanced. Authenticity can't be faked. It's felt. It's transmitted. And that's your advantage. Confidence isn't born from absolute control, but from accepting that you can be yourself without disguise. That's why this process isn't about learning to speak beautifully, but about discovering how your voice can become a tool for personal and professional transformation. Starting today, every conversation you have is an opportunity to put what you've learned into practice. Every meeting, every interview, every everyday conversation is a real-life scenario where you can test, adjust, and strengthen your skills. You don't need to wait for grand stages to express yourself powerfully. True change happens in everyday life. When you ask for what you deserve without hesitation, when you defend an idea clearly, when you express an opinion calmly, when you inspire others without forcing anything. That is the true measure of progress. Keep observing, keep learning, keep correcting. Record your voice, listen to your tones, analyze your reactions. But always do so with compassion. Not to judge yourself, but to grow. Not to seek perfection, but authenticity. And if you ever feel afraid again, remember what you now know. Fear is not a sign that you're not ready. It's an invitation to move forward with courage. Because every time you choose to speak despite the fear, your voice grows stronger. Every time you choose to express yourself respectfully, even when there's tension, your confidence expands. Your voice doesn't just say what you think. It says who you are. And now you have the tools to make every word a powerful affirmation of your presence. Use what you know. Trust what you feel. Adjust as needed. But never stop speaking. Because your voice can be the spark that ignites an idea, eases a conflict, inspires change, or opens a door. You weren't born knowing how to speak confidently, but today you know you can become a person who inspires when you speak. That is your new identity. That is the new you. And so we come to the end of this journey. But more than a full stop, this is the beginning of a new way of being in the world. With a clear voice, a firm body, a focused mind, and an open heart. Because communication isn't simply speaking. It's presenting yourself to the world without fear. It's saying, "Here I am," with every word. It's connecting, influencing, and above all, transforming. From today on, use your voice for what it truly is, a tool of personal power, an extension of your truth, an ally that will always be with you. Thank you for walking this path. The real journey begins now, every time you choose to express yourself. Speak, connect, and always remember, your voice matters, and the way you say things can change your life. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to continue delving deeper into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click here, and I'll see you there.